The moon seemed unreachable and mysterious for a long time in Genshin, but the latest version actually allowed us to go up to it. But why did Teyvat's first inhabitants choose to go to the moon? And what did they do there? And why did it all end when the heavenly principles took over? Those are some things that I'll be discussing in this video, so I really hope you enjoy. Let's get started. Project Moongazer. It all started with the dragon researchers who became interested in the frost moon, and among them was someone called Ibni Bellum. Ibni Bellum lived in a period where the heavenly principles had not yet arrived in Teyvat. However, it was already after the dragon king Nibelung had traveled into the Sea of Stars. Dragons were the only ones inhabiting Teyvat at this time, and since Nibelung was gone, the three moon goddesses were the ones watching over them. During this time, the dragon researchers managed to actually travel to the frost moon thanks to Ibni Bellum, who was then praised as the first moon gazer. When the dragon researchers reached the moon, they received a mysterious message they couldn't decode. Since these dragons were still loyal to Nibelung, they sincerely believed that this message came from him. The dragons then focused their research on deciphering this message and thus built the Eye of Ibni Bellum, a center meant to receive and decode messages received from outer space, but also to send them. The next generation of researchers, namely the lovers Magi's Getty and Unjian, but also their student Lusalim, inherited the research and decided to set it forth. Although Unjian did not believe that the mysterious signal the dragons had received came from Nibelung, but rather from some kind of space creature, he still worked with the research team in the beginning. He started researching the creatures on the frost moon, which is why Unjian's circle was built, together with the space lifeform capture station. Ibni Bellum eventually kicked him out of the research team for his conflicting belief and supposed disrespect, but Unjian kept researching this by himself. When his capture station detected a creature, he went into space to seek it out on his own. He discovered a being called a stellar blackbody, who he then fused with. Unjian was missing for a while, but the research team back on the moon eventually found him, or at least what was left of him, when the spaceship the Moongazer suddenly crashed into the capture station. Magi's Getty investigated the blackbody creature they found inside and discovered it matched Unjian's data signature. Upon researching the creature for several more days, Magi's Getty discovered that it attempted to send them a message, and it died shortly after delivering it. She also researched the blackbody matter that the creature was made out of. Thanks to her research into blackbody matter and archaeolune energy, she managed to preserve the data of this creature and transform it into a massive Kuhenki called Unji, who we fight in the World Quest. But she and Lusalim also managed to decode the message Unjian had sent them, and the message from the stellar blackbody that he was passing along. This message seemed to come from a civilization from another world, and it warned anyone who might receive it of pitch black annihilation. The message also contains a story about the civilization, though it's unclear if this story is factual or mythological, but it uses poetic language to describe a civilization receiving word about dark destruction that would soon come. It's not clear what it is exactly, but it could very well be the Abyss, as Nibelung also brought abyssal powers back after traveling to the Sea of Stars, which is likely where this civilization, who sent the message, also discovered it. Still, it could be anything else as well. After receiving this message, Magi's and Lusalim decided that they should make sure this message would keep spreading through the cosmos, and thus set up Project Moongazer. This project was based on the stellar blackbody, which Magi's discovered is a data-based lifeform. From this, Lusalim suggested they should create a similar lifeform by turning their own desires, affections, and ideals into data. Using this lifeform, they could keep repeating a data-gathering process. Using this idea, Lusalim created Nin Kigia, aka Ninin, or as we know her, Eggy, and this is also where the other black Kuhenkis come from. It's also implied that the three moon goddesses helped make this possible with their primordial power of creation. An ancient pyro dragon, Shakatl, also provided some suggestions. In order to protect Project Moongazer, the researchers also used the black body matter for another purpose, creating a veil to hide the moon. When the Moongazer spaceship first hit the capture station, it was cloaked as well, which is how they discovered that black body matter had a reflective capacity. Everything was tested on a small scale first, and the researchers were actually able to use the black body matter to create a veil by combining it with archaeolune energy in order to hide Unjian's circle. When this succeeded, the project was moved on to the next phases. experiments. Somewhere between the small-scale experiments and the bigger-scale lunar veil, McGee's health started to decline. It seems that McGee's Getty passed away shortly after, and they then wanted to fulfill her wishes by transmitting a message into outer space. Even so, Lusalem felt that it was too dangerous and wanted to finish the lunar veil immediately, which he asked the moon goddesses for help about. Regardless, the same technique that McGee's Getty had used to turn Ungin into Ungi was then also used on her to turn her into Maggie. Shortly after this, a person named Kalag deemed the research that McGee's Getty had done too dangerous, which forced Lusalem to have to move his research. This is when he started his own lunar veil laboratory, where he successfully managed to build a lunar veil that would be capable of hiding the entire moon. The moon as the dragon's last weapon. Unfortunately for Lusalem, the Heavenly Principles found Teyvat shortly after he finished building it, but before he could fully put it to use. They destroyed the veil, which caused a few problems on the moon. Lusalem then decided to hide his research on the dark side of the moon, but eventually surrendered his research to the Heavenly Principles. He was probably worried that the Heavenly Principles would otherwise destroy everything else that the dragons had built on the moon too. At this point, Teyvat entered an era where dragons and humans lived alongside each other, and even the moon goddesses slowly came to accept their new master and their new subjects. When you explore the moon, there are a few hidden stories you can find that show the three moon sisters talking, and their topic of discussion usually involves humans and how they've been interacting with them. I think this shows that hope of Nibelung's return had started disappearing. After all, Ibn Bellum strongly believed that Nibelung had sent them a message, but years of research proved otherwise. I believe this might have proven to them that their king was gone, and they couldn't retrace him anywhere. Even so, Nibelung eventually returned during the funerary year, which subsequently started the War of Funerary Flame. I won't go into too much detail about this, but one thing that's certain is that Nibelung was not happy that the Heavenly Principles had taken the reins over Teyvat from him, and wanted to take them back. He imprisoned the Moon Sisters and then sought a way to defeat the Heavenly Principles, which he believed to have found on the moon. Nibelung sought to turn the dark side of the moon into some kind of ballistic weapon that would be able to defeat the Heavenly Principles. As much as the facility he created looks very impressive and kind of scary, the Heavenly Principles won in the end, and Nibelung was killed. Since Lusalem handed over his research to them, Nibelung considered him a traitor. Lusalem was prepared to pay for what he did, and it's implied that he died here too. Lusalem's death meant that Project Moongazer was left to one creature, his artificial daughter Ninin. Ninin stayed on the moon for many years and continued the research. Using all the preparations done by researchers before her, Ninin was able to be reborn as a data-based Black Kuhenki over and over again. Eventually, this led to her being reborn as the Kuhenki we meet in the Moon Quest, Eggy. When we first meet Eggy, it's already clear that she already knows her purpose. Although she can't put it into words, she knows that she has to go to the moon and do something there. Throughout the entire Moon Quest, Eggy is able to get data from different terminals, which she can do due to her nature as a data-based organism. Obviously, one of the terminals eventually reveals that Eggy used to be Ninkigia, whose data was merged with Ibn Bellum, McGee's Getty, Ungin, and Lusalem's data signatures. Here, Eggy also discovers that her final mission is to send a message into space, so that the warning from the stellar blackbody can keep resounding. In turn, she will be turned into data again, so that her data signature can yet again be reborn as a new Kuhenki, so that another message can eventually be sent into space again. However, since the Heavenly Principles destroyed the lunar veil and Columbina brought the moon back from the fake sky, there's no longer anything protecting or hiding the moon. Instead, Columbina decided to lend her aid and use her powers to protect the message instead. The moon's legacy. After Eggy sends her message into space, there actually seems to be a response. If you listen closely, you'll hear the voices of the traveler and later their sibling. This means that the siblings actually received a message that the dragons sent into space when they were traveling around in their spaceship. This reveals some important lore about the siblings. First, the fact that the traveler does not remember despite being conscious while traveling in the spaceship. Traveler did not even remember much about the spaceship before, much less that they received a message from an unknown civilization while traveling on it. So either Traveler has amnesia of some kind, or their memory was forcibly wiped. In the message that the siblings sent back to the moon, they mention that they're dealing with some kind of trouble that prevents them from visiting Teyvat, but they promise to visit it someday. This reveals the second piece of lore. Teyvat was not their original destination. Although the Not Cry Archon quest revealed that the spaceship is controlled by some kind of unidentified artificial intelligence that would choose a suitable place for the two siblings to live, from this message it seems that they had some agency regarding the location at first. It also raises the question, what changed? Why were the siblings not able to travel to Teyvat before, but did it eventually become their end destination anyway? Or was their entry into Teyvat not intentional in the first place? The last piece of lore has to do with the first cutscene in Genshin, the one where Asmodee stops us. This scene becomes much more relevant again when you think about the fact that the Heavenly Principles put the Frost Moon into the fake sky, and then also put the sibling spaceship there once they arrived. It can't be said for sure why the Heavenly Principles would want to hide either of these things, but I have a small theory about this. One thing that the dragon researchers on the moon and the siblings have in common is their contact with worlds or civilizations beyond Teyvat. On one hand is the message that the dragons received from an unknown civilization warning of a dark destruction, and on the other hand are the siblings who traveled to the Sea of Stars to find a new world. This means that the former makes Teyvat's presence known, while the latter was able to detect it. Since the Heavenly Principles stopped both of these things from happening, it points to something pretty concerning. They want to hide Teyvat. Honestly, I couldn't tell you why they would want to do this, but it would explain why it's so incredibly difficult to leave Teyvat or find any traces of other civilizations, and why they would want to separate the traveler and their sibling. Plus, Octavia, another character who travels between worlds, is said to have some kind of destruction following her. Several signs are pointing towards the danger of traveling to different worlds, which even includes Nibelung, who, by traveling the Sea of Stars, brought the Abyss back to Teyvat. Regardless, it's not really clear why the Heavenly Principles not only put an end to Project Moongazer, but also to the traveler's journey. Is it out of protection, or is there something darker going on? Thank you so much for watching this video, I really hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the moon. Also, if you liked this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more of my stuff. Bye bye!